Hi, hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We've got a really great presentation on food and nutrition because, we always need more information on food and nutrition. So I do want to set a couple reminders that we are recording this. So if you do come off camera or off mute, you might be in the screen at some point. So just be mindful of that if you're not comfortable being seen or heard. If you do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat, and once we're at the end of the presentation, we'll start going through the questions. And once we're all done, if you would like to speak your question, I would just ask that you raise your hand so we know to have you unmute. But otherwise, please do your best to stay on mute so we don't interrupt. And Samina, I will give you the floor and go right ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I guess I'll start with a little introduction. My name is Samina Qureshi. I'm a registered dietitian and board certified digestive health specialist, so a GI dietitian. And I'm very excited to be here to talk about how to nourish your body with gastroparesis. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I also work in my private practice called Wholesome Start, where I support people with co-occurring GI and metabolic disorders and help them nourish their bodies without rigid diets, guilt, or shame. So let's get started. So what we'll cover today, really, we're going to be focusing on practical nutrition strategies for nourishment, comfort, and also food enjoyment, right? We'll be talking about meal timing with gastroparesis, choosing textures that can support comfort as well as satisfaction, when maybe liquids versus solids can be helpful. We'll talk about macronutrients, what they are, and building balanced meals, protein needs and what that can look like realistically, and tracking nutrition without increasing stress. So let's go. If you're new to learning about gastroparesis and how to manage it, we know that gastroparesis is a gastric motility condition where motility has been impaired, and that can result in delayed or irregular contractions of the stomach, leading to various GI symptoms, which can include early satiety, bloating, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, fatigue, among many other things. And as a reminder, I did want to say that there's actually no perfect gastroparesis diet, right? Your experience with gastroparesis is unique. Your symptoms, your personal tolerance to different foods, preferences, medical history, any co-occurring conditions that you may be managing, the cultural background that you come from, medications, and nutritional needs all matter and influence what will work best for you. And so as we continue this conversation today, just remember these are general kind of education strategies to discuss with your healthcare team. This is not personalized medical advice or nutrition therapy. So what is the goal of nutrition with gastroparesis? If you all received your gastroparesis diagnosis, and all you received was a handout of what to eat and what not to eat, I'm so sorry, right? A GI dietitian can be a useful source to help you better understand what foods you tolerate, which foods trigger symptoms for you, how to meet your nutritional needs, how to help you manage co-occurring nutrition-related conditions like diabetes, kidney disease, high cholesterol, and how to find nutrition strategies that fit your unique needs. So, the goal isn't to avoid all fat in our diet, to consume only a liquid diet, to avoid all fibers, or only rely on tube feedings, right? We really do want to focus on meeting your specific nutrition needs, symptom management, work towards food enjoyment eventually, and find strategies that truly do fit your needs and your lifestyle. So, why eating can feel complicated with gastroparesis? It for many, many reasons, right? Living with delayed stomach emptying can impact how much you eat, how much you feel like you can eat, the early satiety part of things, hunger signals, how food feels after eating, the texture of food that you can consume and tolerate, as well as your relationship with food. So, depending on how much time it takes for your stomach to empty, food intake may be minimally affected, like you don't have to make any changes, or severely limited. And it may even require tube feeding at the end of this, right? So everybody's journey is different. So, one of the things that Samantha and I have discussed before is meal timing with gastroparesis. Does it matter if you eat most of your meals at the end of the day versus earlier in the day? Let's kind of dig a little deeper into that. For some people, meal timing can influence how full they feel after meals, their level of nausea, reflux, energy levels, and ability to meet nutritional needs. What may be helpful for some people is eating smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day. So, if, for example, you're used to only eating one larger meal throughout, maybe towards the end of the day, what this could look like is breaking up that meal into smaller portions to better tolerate it earlier in the day, while also adding in different nutrients or foods to meet your nutritional needs. So 5 to 7 eating occasions is what I like to call them, because sometimes they're not like a traditional meal, right? It's just an opportunity to add that little bit more of nutrition to your day. And you really want to focus on spreading out that intake throughout the day versus having that one main nourishment opportunity. Um, and I think last time Samantha and I spoke, she had mentioned, but what if you only eat later in the day? Is that wrong? Absolutely not, right? You're not doing anything wrong. Some people eat more in the evening because symptoms are better later. They may have more time to eat based on their job, energy levels, just what they have going on in day-to-day life. Eating may feel too stressful. Their appetite may improve later throughout the day. Your body may have adapted to what feels manageable, and that's fine, right? My concern here as a dietitian is if you're only offering yourself one opportunity to eat and it's later in the day, how is that going to impact how you feel overnight while you're sleeping? And then potential symptoms may arise, whether that's vomiting, reflux, because you quickly lay down after eating that large meal. And how are you able to meet your nutrition needs? And what I mean by that is your calories, your vitamins, your minerals, your macronutrients, fiber, all that good stuff. So if this is you, let's talk about what we can do from here. You may want to ask yourself some questions, right? If eating later in the day works for me, why would I change it? You can ask yourself, am I meeting my nutritional needs? Are my symptoms interfering with my day-to-day life? Am I stuck in a cycle and I just can't get to the next step of making that next move with nutrition? Do I need things to be different? Will this help how I feel in the long run? And will this make it easier for me to eat more tomorrow? And what I mean by that is sometimes you get stuck in this cycle of, okay, well, I don't feel good until 5 p.m. So I'm just going to have my meal in the later, like early evening, late evening time of day. And then you have a meal, you tolerate it, and it naturally takes time to digest. The day goes on, you have no space then for any more nutrition, and you go to sleep. You wake up in the morning, you may have more symptoms because you went to sleep on a very full stomach, etc. Does that meal, although that was the only time you were able to eat, impact your ability to then nourish yourself earlier in the day? So what would it look like if we shifted that later meal earlier to slowly add in more nutrition? So if you do want to experiment with meal timing, of course, the goal is not to force yourself to eat more breakfast and lunch, right? We have to listen to your body. You know your body best. Instead, what small change could create more opportunities for nourishment? For example, adding a snack before that late meal. Could you have something small? Moving one preferred food in the day earlier, splitting one larger meal into 2 eating occasions so that when you do go to sleep, you're not feeling that like discomfort, abdominal pressure, and digestive symptoms. So let's talk about texture. Modifying food texture or the particle size of the food allows many people to enjoy a wider variety of foods while reducing symptoms. Instead of thinking about, hey, this food is on my yes list and this food is on my no list, it can be helpful to think about how a food is prepared. Rather than giving the generic recommendation to avoid all fibrous foods, we can often change the particle size of that fiber through cooking, blending, peeling, or pureeing. And this may make the food easier for you to tolerate while still allowing you to include foods that you enjoy and also want to benefit from, right? The nutrition. For example, a raw apple. Can you imagine yourself eating a raw apple? Maybe not. Um, Maybe the peel would be difficult to tolerate, or the chewing, having to chew that many times to make it that applesauce consistency would be a little difficult for your jaw. Maybe the high insoluble fiber would be a little bit too much for your body to handle. Um, and that's all okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean that apples are off the table completely. You might find that peeled, cooked applesauce or baked apple without the peel or pureed apples are much more comfortable because the fiber has been softened and the particle size is smaller. So think of texture as a spectrum, right? Rather than an all or nothing decision. Or on days when your symptoms may be flaring or you're having just like a hard digestion day, you might rely more on liquid or pureed foods. On days when you feel better, you may be able to tolerate more softer textures. The goal isn't to stay in one category of like liquid, pureed, or soft foods. It's to have options that help you meet your nutrition needs while respecting what your body can handle on a given day. And these are just examples of, if you've never heard, liquid foods may mean clear liquid broths, strained juices, oral rehydration solutions, or like electrolyte drinks. Nutritional shakes, protein drinks, milk alternatives. Pureed foods are really those blenderized smoothie type consistency. Blended chicken soup with mashed potatoes. Soft foods usually look like the food that it originally is, just softer, right? So well-cooked, skinless, seedless vegetables, soft fruits like canned peaches. Foods can be easily mashed with a fork, so we call this fork tender. For example, baked cod with white rice and skinless steamed carrots. So texture can really help you meet your nutritional needs by altering it, but also offer a little bit of satisfaction as well. We know that eating can eventually become more than nutrition, right? Food can also provide pleasure, cultural connection, normalcy, socializing, and you may be missing, that food variety, the crunch factor, different textures of foods, the ability to enjoy fresh foods, being able to eat with others as well. So the goal here is to find your personal balance between both comfort and enjoyment. It's the sweet spot. So when might texture variety be easy to play around with gastroparesis? Many people notice that their symptoms fluctuate throughout the day. For some individuals, earlier in the day, they may have more appetite, more energy, more tolerance for texture. And for some people, later in the day, they may be able to rely on softer foods, smaller portions, more liquids, may feel easier. This is all individual. And the key here is that nutrition is nuanced and blanket recommendations do not work for everyone, right? So at this point, it can be really helpful to get curious and ask yourself what would work best for you. If you're like, yeah, I do have more space in my stomach to tolerate more soft type foods in the day, but as the day progresses, I think the only thing I can do is like sip on a nutrition shake. That's wonderful, right? There's no right or wrong answer here. It's listening to your body and determining what will work. So let's talk a little bit about macronutrients. Call this Nutrition 101. Macronutrients are made up of three things, right? Carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And so carbohydrates, you can think of them as energy, instant energy. Protein is what helps to build and repair our muscles. Fat helps with nutrient absorption as well as satisfaction and kind of that like flavor profile as well. So when eating feels difficult, it's easy to start thinking of foods as safe or unsafe, but I also want us to think about food like what it's actually doing for our bodies. So every time you eat, you're giving your body an important nutrients to support energy, healing, and of course, overall health. So let's use this picture of the chicken noodle soup as an example. The carbohydrates, again, your body's preferred source of energy. Your brain, muscles, and many organs rely on carbohydrates to function. And if you've been eating very little because of symptoms, carbohydrates can actually help restore and replenish your energy stores. In this soup, the noodles and carrots provide carbohydrates. Other examples could include rice, bread, potatoes, fruits, starchy vegetables, juice, whole grains, and beans. Protein, like I mentioned before, help to maintain muscles, support your immune system, and help repair your body's tissues. That's especially important if you've experienced weight loss or haven't been able to eat enough. In this soup example, the chicken is a source of protein, but it can also come from eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, fish, chicken, beef, tofu, beans, nuts, seeds, and protein and nutritional shakes as well. Protein drinks and nutritional shakes as well. I think fat also gets a bad rep in gastroparesis. You may have been told to avoid fat completely because higher fat meals can slow stomach emptying for some people, but fat is still an important nutrient, right? It's actually essential. It helps us to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K. It also supports hormonal function and production and helps meals feel more satisfying. The goal isn't to avoid fat completely. It's to find the amount and type that your body tolerates. So in this soup, there may be small amount of fat from the chicken broth. You could also drizzle olive oil if that works for your body. Many people report with gastroparesis that liquid sources of fat are more tolerable than solid sources. So that's something to think about. And what I love about this bowl of soup is that it isn't just chicken noodle soup. It is also a balanced meal, right? We talked about how all of these foods really provide great nutrition for our body. And so rather than thinking about individual macronutrients, try thinking about how can I build a meal that gives my body a little bit of each of these. So again, I do want to touch on fat again. It can be complicated. For some, these higher fats can increase fullness or discomfort, but we know that fat is still an important nutrient for our bodies. Of course, instead of saying all or nothing, I can't have any fats, you may want to choose options that may be better tolerated, like oils blended into foods or smoothies, nutritional shakes, and spread throughout the day. If you do want to meet your fat nutrient needs, I would recommend also not having like a large amount of olive oil in one sitting. It really is beneficial to break it up into many eating occasions or meals. And of course, I'm sure you've all heard this before, but we don't want to focus most of our meals on the large solid fat portions like fried, greasy, crispy, and creamy foods. You may have just learned from trial or error that that doesn't work for you. So let's touch on protein because I think this is a big question, especially on social media. I'm just hearing everyone talking about protein maxing and how much protein do I really, really need? And the answer is it depends. Protein needs vary based on your body size, activity level, medical conditions, whether you're recovering from an illness or even trying to regain weight. A general recommendation for most adults is somewhere between zero point 0.8 grams of protein or 1 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. So let's kind of walk through this example here. If someone weighs 150 pounds, that's about 68 kilograms. Their estimated protein needs would range anywhere from the minimum side to 55 grams of protein per day up to 110 grams of protein per day, depending on their individual situation. Now, if you have gastroparesis, eating 3 large meals may not feel realistic, right? That's why many people do better with these 5 to 7 eating occasions throughout the day. So instead of asking, can I eat an entire chicken breast and meet all my nutritional protein needs, you can ask, can I include a little protein with this meal or snack? These little additions truly do add up to help you meet your nutritional needs. So if you're eating, let's say 6 times a day, small little portions, that might look like aiming for somewhere around 10 to 20 grams of protein per eating occasion. Um, Knowing that some meals will naturally be higher and others will be lower. The goal isn't perfection. It's giving your body multiple opportunities to meet its protein needs throughout the day. So we can now talk about what does 10 to 20 grams of protein look like, right? These are very rough estimates. I don't want you to get hung up on hitting exactly 20 grams of protein at every meal. Sometimes I'm not even able to do that, and that's totally fine, right? Think of these as examples and ideas, not rules. Some meals might provide that 5 to 10 grams of protein, others might have 20 to 25 grams of protein. Great. Whatever you get is progress. And that's ultimately what we're looking for. Every time you include a protein source, you're giving your body another opportunity to support its muscles, immune system, and healing, especially with gastroparesis. These small opportunities really do add up. And don't forget that liquid nutrition support like Boost, Ensure, Kate Farms, and protein drinks also count towards nourishment. So if liquid diet is what you're able to tolerate right now, or this is the progress that you've made to get to a liquid diet, awesome. This isn't a race. Of course, you want to be able to go back to eating foods that you enjoy and all of that, but we just have to work with where you're at. So we talked about macros, we talked about meal timing. Should you track your food? Or is that a good option, right? I think for some it can be helpful and for some it can be harmful. And I think with dietitians, a lot of our answers end up being, it depends, which can be really frustrating. But I like to turn the question then back on you. Let's get curious and ask yourself, will this information help me care for my body today? Or will it prevent me from even making the next step tomorrow? So, of course, you can monitor nutrition and progress in more gentle ways, right? Maybe you can focus on symptoms, energy, meal patterns. Did I meet my 3 to 5 meals that was my goal for today? Hydration, looking at your urine to assess, like, am I severely dehydrated? Is my urine already dark yellow and concentrated and odorful? And variety of food. Have I had more than one type of food today? Can I maybe add in applesauce with the nutritional shake to get different nutrients, fiber, and satisfaction? Um, Other questions that you can ask yourself versus simply tracking on an app. Did this meal give me enough energy? How did my symptoms respond to what I ate? Am I regularly eating throughout the day? Did I include a source of protein at some meals? Did I include a fruit or veggie today? Did I allow myself to eat carbohydrates and whole grains, right? And of course, with food tracking, there are many out there that can help you track your intake and symptoms without hyper focusing on macros and calories. For some, that can be really helpful, especially for patients with gastroparesis and diabetes that may need to monitor their carbohydrate intake more, or even people that are like, hey, I really want to get on top of meeting my fiber needs in a way that's going to support me to have more regular bowel movements and have the consistency of my bowel movements be better. So I'm going to track this so I can see where's the ballpark amount of fiber that I'm getting for the day, or did I eat enough protein? And once you kind of have this information from the tracking, you can use that to help you make decisions going forward. And maybe you won't need the tracking forever long term. So this was a few key takeaways. There is no one size fits all diet for gastroparesis, right? We really do have to get curious and ask questions to yourself about what may work. we know that your nutrition needs still matter even when symptoms are challenging. So, even on your rough days where you're unable to meet all of your nutrition needs or that one goal of having one protein shake, it's okay. There's always tomorrow. We can always take a few step backs and game plan for what will work for you going forward. Texture, timing, and food enjoyment are important factors to consider, and small adjustments can create meaningful changes. And again, I think curiosity is great to lead with. It can help with coming up with a plan versus judgment. So that about covers what I had planned to talk about today. Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to open it up to any questions that y'all have.
I will just say thank you again because I love chatting with you. And for those that don't know, Samina did an episode of Spoonful of Spite with us earlier this week that just came out on Wednesday. I can put a link in the chat if you want to check that out. Just a little bit more information about kind of what we talked about here and everything that you shared, but from a little bit of a different perspective. And I think really, we all know, and I've said this 1,000 times, and I will never stop saying it until it changes, that we've had such little nutrition advice and, not even knowing that GI dietitians exist and we can have all this information and there's somebody out there that not only is an expert in the field but really does understand what we're going through. So when you work with someone like Samina, you're not getting just a blanket like don't eat this or don't eat that. It's a real individualized approach based on your needs, your diagnoses, your preferences, your cultural beliefs. All of those things are rolled into one that can often be overlooked and that sometimes we might not even realize that they're being overlooked because we didn't know that there was someone out there that can really help us. So I think that these conversations are much more than just what do I eat today? Give me a meal plan and let me see if it works. There's a lot more that goes into your nutrition, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And ultimately, we want you eating as much as possible. We just don't want to eat something that's going to put us into a flare or make us sick, but the hope is to eat as much as we possibly can without hurting ourselves. And as weird as it sounds to say that, it's like we want to be eating. Everybody wants to be eating, and that's just I feel like we don't have that conversation enough until you're really talking to somebody who gets it on for a variety of reasons. Does anybody have any questions? You can unmute or raise your hand before we just start chatting to see what information comes in, or if you want to put it in the chat. I know I shared a couple things in there, and I'm going to grab the YouTube link now while I am thinking about it, so you guys can feel free to unmute or something in there. Or not, I feel the silence. You're not going to want to hear me talk the entire time.
Yeah, we can chat.
Okay, so I stuck that in there. Well, one thing I'll bring up while people are thinking of questions is we talked toward the end, and I know I put an app in there, the Toot app, because I talk about it. I personally use it because it really does help me track my food without having to worry so much about all the details. Like, in all reality, I want to know, did this make me just not feel that good? And what did I eat? Not necessarily how many calories was it. And sometimes I'll make little notes in there to say, this was 20 grams of protein. Just so if I want to go back, I'm like, oh, I was able to hit my protein during that meal. But when it comes to tracking and we want to maybe identify some of our trigger foods, how do you recommend identifying those trigger foods without super hypervigilance and or not overly restricting our diets while we're trying to figure things out? Like how do we work to find that happy medium?
Yeah, the best way to identify your trigger foods is to use a food log, right? This could be a simple notebook, like a pen and paper. It could be an app, like you mentioned, where you're not focusing more on like the macros. You're really trying to focus on how food makes you feel and
Mhm.
remember that. Working with a GI dietitian is going to be really helpful because we may be able to notice things that you didn't, right? So in my practice, I use a app that has a food and symptom journal, and my patients are able to take pictures and report how they felt before and after meals, right? And with managing a chronic illness, you're already spent, right? You're just trying to oftentimes like make it through the day. You have other things that you're taking care of. Sometimes that hypervigilance can come when you're grasping at straws and trying to make sense of something that is a little bit complex. So having that support of a dietitian can really help you. And what I do is I say, like, you don't have to look at this anymore. You literally just upload it, forget about it, report your symptoms. And at our next session, I will review all of this with you. Or if I notice that, hey, my patient is having multiple vomiting episodes, I go back and I message them saying, like, hey, these are the patterns that I've noticed. Why don't we switch this from this and see if it works better for you? So I truly do think getting that customized support from a real person can be invaluable. And I know I'm very biased.
I am too. It's okay. I tell everybody, I'm like, go see a dietitian and, go talk to somebody. And I know some of us have been gaslit by dietitians in the past. So I know, especially around food, that it can feel very daunting to want to go talk to somebody and try this all over again. We feel that with GI doctors, we probably feel that with a lot of clinicians. But it feels very personal when it comes to food. And I know working with multiple dietitians and finding some really amazing ones, and all the conversations that I've had here have really shown me that you need to find the right person for you. Just like with any physician or any therapist or anything, you need to find somebody who understands you and your needs. And that might take a little bit of time, which is annoying, but kind of just how it works there. But a GI dietitian specifically, I wish I had known that this was an option for me all those years ago. But now that I do know it's an option, I scream it from the rooftops as loud as I can for everybody. Um, so a couple questions did come in. One says a question about protein. I'm in physical therapy for muscle and joint pain, and she's advised that I need to get my intake up so my body can recover. Do our bodies adapt to the lower food? Is physio a waste of money if I can't get my intake up? And are protein drinks beneficial multiple times a day? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, your body isn't necessarily going to adapt to needing fewer needs. We don't want to get to that place,
Mm-mm.
right? We don't want your body to be wasting for you to lose muscle mass, for you to lose bone density, and further reduce your metabolic needs, because then it'll be hard to function, right? We want you to have nutritional needs. We want you to be a robust person doing all of the things that you want to do. I don't think that physical therapy is a waste, because I'm sure the goal there is to support your support your muscles, your mobility, and joint pain, right? I think you can work towards meeting your protein needs. And even if you aren't able to get there, working towards it, whatever you are able to add in, your body will appreciate, right? So if all you're able to do is have one protein shake, awesome. If you have the ability to have more or purchase pre made drinks, they can get very expensive. So that's why I'm saying this. And you want to have multiple a day to meet your protein needs, that's fine. There's no, you should be okay as long as you're not going over your protein needs or as long as you don't have kidney disease. So please consult with your doctor and dietitian. If you need ideas, so in terms of post workout nutrition, pre workout, we want you to focus on carbohydrates. So let's say you tolerate banana, it's soft, you're on a soft diet, you can chew it a few times and it gets to that applesauce consistency easily, right? So you have the banana for carbohydrates for energy to get you through the physical therapy appointment. Post physical therapy, it's important for you to focus on protein and carbohydrates, right? We want to replenish the muscle glycogen stores, which are the carbohydrates your muscles use as instant energy. And we want to replenish your, or really rebuild your muscles with the amino acids from protein. So, an easy example of a protein source could be chocolate milk, right? Whether it be soy based because your body does better with plant based sources or regular cow's milk, low fat option for you. It's a really good post workout. Many athletes actually drink this because it automatically gives you a source of protein and carbohydrates. So that's a simple one that you can add in.
I'm so glad you mentioned chocolate milk because that's what I was thinking. After my runs years ago, that would be what I had after. I had a carton of milk and I kept that in my car in a cooler and I would grab some chocolate milk. And I never ever thought that that would be like the recommended or a recommended idea.
And if you're someone who lives in your car, like many of us traveling, I live in Texas, so it's massive and we're just in our cars all the time. Horizon Milk, not sponsored, but they don't have to be refrigerated. They make the little kids' cartons, the little boxes of milk, and they come in vanilla, unflavored, and chocolate milk. So that could be an option for you if you tolerate dairy. And I know
Little
that
did you know that was what I used.
and I know that Silk Soy also makes those like little baby
Mhm,
cartons for you to
mhm.
keep. So there's always ways to boost nutrition.
Yeah. And sometimes I know with protein, I get this question a lot, and I think it is, like you said, protein is a very talked about macronutrient. We all know that it's really important, but it can be one of the most difficult macronutrients for us to get. I know that I struggle with it, and finding a protein powder or a protein shake that I tolerated, it ebbs and flows throughout the years too. And the type of protein, like I went from a whey-based protein to a vegan-based protein to other plant-based proteins, and what I tolerate doesn't always stay the same. So,
Mhm.
one thing I will say when it comes to trying different things to see if the companies might have sample sizes or sample packets so that way you can get a variety of some or just get a couple of them and try them, and you're not putting a large monetary investment into a protein to find out that you hate it, it's disgusting, and it doesn't work for you anyway, or maybe it works for you but you can't stand the taste. It's really helpful to be able to try a couple things. And I say don't get discouraged. Easier said than done, I know, because I've been down that road, but figuring it out, I think just giving something a try if you can. If it's not an allergy issue or it's something that you feel safe trying, a couple sips of something. That's what I do throughout the day is just sip on a protein shake because I can't chug it down the way that I used to. So I'll make a shake, I put it in a stainless steel bottle and just sip on it so it stays relatively cool throughout the day. And that seems to be helpful.
Yes, yes. Keyword sip. Don't chug.
Yes. Yeah, I made that mistake a few too many times. We don't make that mistake anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say on protein powders and just food samples in general, if you have a dietitian, ask them for samples because oftentimes we have relationships with protein companies and even like Kate Farms and different Orgain and all of these different brands to give us samples. And then I mail them out to my clients so that if these are things I want you to try, I will get a sample for you, or I'll just put you in contact with my contact and say, like, can you help this person find samples? Can you mail them directly to them? So reach out to the companies or your dietitian because I think at the end of the day, everyone just wants you to be able to nourish your body.
yeah, no, that's a good idea. I never actually thought about asking somebody to help with that. So that's
Yeah.
very helpful. Another question is about comfort foods, asking about some different comfort foods that could be added to the diet, no known allergies, but asking about something like soup or shepherd's pie, like maybe
Ooh.
how to make them macronutrient and gastroparesis friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think shepherd's pie is like a really great option for someone on a soft diet. You would just have to make sure that the ground meat you use in there is really ground down, and it's not too tough. In terms of the mashed potatoes on top of the shepherd pie and whether or not you're using like shepherd's pie, I feel like can be made so many different ways because it's usually just like the meat pie filling with mashed potatoes on top, right? Correct me if I'm
Hmm.
wrong. But
That's how
some
I
people
remember
make
it.
it like a real pie with like a crust. And so pie crusts in general are very high in fat, so that would be something to consider. If it's a crustless, just traditional shepherd's pie, we want to make sure that the mashed potatoes used on top. I would I would recommend using for someone with gastroparesis the instant mashed potatoes, like the flakes, because they've already gone through one step of processing to make it easier on your digestive system. Just watch the amount of like heavy whipping cream or fat, meaning butter, that you're adding in there. Could it be made with olive oil or some other type of fat that you tolerate?
Now, with shepherd's pie, since that's brought up, I haven't had shepherd's pie in so long. Now I want some. With the meat in particular, I know growing up that shepherd's pie for me was always beef. And
Hmm.
like I don't tolerate beef myself, and now I don't even have a craving for it anymore. So I just wanted to mention something like ground turkey or ground chicken. You know, if you don't have to follow the recipe exactly, like one of the reasons that I think nutrition conversations are so important is because you can find something or a recipe that you really want or a food that you love and you want to eat it, but maybe one or two of the ingredients just doesn't work for you. So you can swap out meat. You know, if you are okay with ground chicken or ground turkey, swap that in. Or maybe you just need a really super lean ground beef. I'm like, does beef come that way anymore? I don't even remember. It's been
It
so long
does
since
if
I've
you go
cooked
to a
it.
butcher. It does if you go to like a specific butcher because I recently got ground beef and it was so lean. I like it was way too lean.
So right up our alley. Got
Yeah.
it. Um,
Um,
and that's really it's hard though because you think like you're sometimes you think you might be making the right choice or you're making the right food choice, but not necessarily looking at the fat content. And then you're wondering, well, why might I not be tolerating this? So reading food labels and also understanding food labels is really important too, because that can be helpful in determining like I'm a person who can eat I would say maybe a little bit more fat on average in my diet than some of the people that I've talked to over the years. But, again, that ebbs and flows. But I know that I need to look at the fat content in something to determine how much of that might I be able to eat. It might be a whole serving. Let's say something has 20 grams of fat. That can be really, really high amount of fat. Maybe I can still eat that. I just need to lower the serving size a little bit. Or you mentioned the instant mashed potatoes. We know that potatoes are the food that we all know and love. It's our favorite and most versatile food. So if you have somebody make it for you, I know years ago, friends and family, you go and like mashed potatoes, great. I tolerate potatoes. I'm like, can you tell me what you put in it? And then as they started telling me the amount of heavy cream and butter and all the things, and I'm like, never mind, I can't eat that. So it doesn't mean that you can't eat mashed potatoes. It might just mean that you bring instant mashed potatoes with you if you do something like that. They make little cups that you put water in, you stir it up, and boom, you've
mhm.
got your food for you. And we hear all the time like processed foods aren't good for you, but sometimes you just want to be able to eat something. You want to be part of something. And this is, just my opinion that fed is best and what works for you is none of anyone else's business except maybe your dietitian and your GI doctor. But it's, what works for you and what you tolerate is just the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little thing on processed foods. Number one, all foods are processed from
True.
the point that it is picked or butchered or whatever, that is processing, right?
Hmm.
It goes through it's the process it takes to get from the original source to the plate, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I think we just have to look at the nutrition label and see, is this going to work for me and my specific needs or not? So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's reading nutrient labels is so important. We had a couple other questions come in, which is great. It says, would higher in fat protein shakes be tolerated by some individuals with gastroparesis to increase energy intake, even if they're eating smaller meals throughout the day, but still having some difficulties meeting their caloric needs? For example, like Kate Farms 1.4, other protein shakes are higher in calories, or a smoothie made with fruit, milk, yogurt, maybe some peanut butter and protein powder to make it higher calorie and protein. If you divide the smoothie or protein shake into two events to reduce the volume. So it sounds like they want to increase, the protein and the calorie, but the volume and sometimes that high fat can make it intolerable. So a recommendation of maybe sipping on that, or like they said, to maybe split it up throughout the day to be able to tolerate that better.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing effort that you're making to meet your nutritional needs. But yeah, splitting that up and remembering to sip and not say, okay, I have 30 minutes to finish this whole thing. Just take your time with it, put it in that stainless steel cup, maybe add some ice cubes, um, and see how your body feels. Again, check in with yourself. If you're starting to feel like it's coming up, you're getting queasy, take some time.
Mhm. I know one thing, protein powders and things that I've used over the years tend to be lower in fat and carbs, which I think is just the nature of like most protein powders. And when I wanted to make it more calorically dense, if I wanted to add like yogurt or milk or peanut butter or something to that either blended or I'll say shaken protein shake, being able to split that up and add a particular amount that I felt comfortable per meal, like maybe my limit was 6 grams of fat per shake or per meal, then I was able to split the protein up and add that amount of fat throughout the day to make it a little bit easier. But there was one other question and about asking for any other recommendations to add to weekly meals. So any other gastroparesis friendly meal or food ideas that you might have to share.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd love to know a little bit more personally about you to answer this question, but things that come to mind for me, especially I know you were the person who asked about comfort meals, is
Mhm,
like soups and stews. So traditionally, with like Pakistani cuisine where I'm from, we make a lot of soups, stews, curries, things like that that are eaten with rice. Um, Lentil soup can be a good one,
mhm,
right? It's going to be a great source of plant-based fiber, protein, and you can make it as liquidy as you need while controlling the amount of fat that you put in their oil. And then if you wanted to bulk that up, you could get like a rotisserie chicken and shred into tiny bits the like chicken breast if that's what you tolerate, and then add a little bit of rice, whatever that portion is that you tolerate. So thinking about like soups and stews that feel good to you. And if you're not a soup and stew person, that's fine. If you like eggs, we could make an egg salad with
mhm,
um, egg, obviously, and whether or not you tolerate the egg yolk, could it be half of the egg yolk or a fourth of the egg yolk? And if you wanted to not use the mayonnaise that's so high in fat, could we find a fat-free Greek yogurt that we could mix it with and then have that with some like rice crackers if you still wanted that texture and crunch without having something a little too hard on the system to digest. There's a lot of other food ideas and recommendations I have. Trying to think if I have a Pinterest board, but I feel like my gastroparesis board is mostly shakes. So I'll have to look up more more recipes and put them there.
Talking about the egg salad too, is that's all a good sneaky way to get in protein is using Greek yogurt into things like that. Which I never thought of that because I'm like, ew, that's going to be gross. It's not gross. I really rarely could tell the difference once I seasoned it or made it, mashed it up
Mhm.
however I liked it, or as you mentioned, rice crackers, like getting that crunch in there, you really don't notice the difference. But I wanted to mention too something that I'd done over the years was canned chicken. That was easier and softer for me to digest. And I will say that when you're doing canned foods, to be mindful of the salt intake if that's something that you do need to keep an eye on. I don't. So it doesn't matter for me, but just something to mention because it's softer, it's easier to digest. And again, you can make like different salads with it. You can even mix egg and chicken to have something maybe a little heartier. But you
Mhm.
don't have to eat the whole thing, but something that might be helpful to do too. Because I loved like chicken salad and tuna salad and egg salad, but for a while, just that type of food didn't work for me. So I had to make some swaps like Greek yogurt, or just for a long time, I couldn't tolerate egg yolks. So I had egg whites and that's all
Mhm.
I could do. And then I get farm fresh eggs and I found that I did a lot better with the farm fresh eggs than commercial eggs. If anybody, that's something that someone can do. I found like eating the more local meal, local eggs. I'm jumping over my own words here. That I felt that what they fed the chickens from where I got them made a difference in the quality of the egg, and that changed my tolerance level. So something to consider if that's available to you and you're able to purchase anything local. It might make a difference for you. It might not. It could just be that you don't like eggs or don't tolerate them. But for me, that made a really big difference because I missed egg yolks. Egg white salads kind of got a little sad after a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, I will say canned foods are going to be very, very helpful because they're sitting usually in some sort of liquid that does soften it, whether it's a vegetable, a fruit, or protein. Another thing that's gotten a little bit of a craze just in general nutrition are sardines in a can. And they're a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, protein, calcium, and vitamin D because you're essentially eating the bones as well. So, if you are a sardine person and you want to make yourself a little rice cracker sardine little lunch, yeah, you could definitely try exploring that as well.
As you mentioned sardines, it's not the first time I've heard that, and I'm like, I'm still not that desperate yet. But if anybody does try that, I would love to know how it comes out and how you tolerated it because I don't know why I'm like I can't do that, but
Yeah,
it
it's
is
different.
recommended. It's
Mhm.
good protein, and if you like it, again, if it works for you, that is the best thing for you. If it's something that you tolerate, if it's something that, your dietitian, your doctor, everybody's okay with, you like the taste of it, that's the best thing for you. None of these cookie cutter meal plans or bits of information are going to work. If you're handed a low FODMAP diet list, but you tolerate something on the FODMAP list, you shouldn't have to not eat that just because the piece of paper says that's no on that list. You have to make your own list and find what works for you and help identify those triggers. And working with a professional, it doesn't have to be forever. You could maybe see for a few sessions. Over time, you can always go back if you are like, I'm starting to struggle again and I'm not sure what to do. I've tried all the things. That's where having these experts is really, really important. And I can't stress enough what an amazing result I had, not just with finding foods that worked, but my mindset around food, how much that improved by working with dietitians and working with people who understood what I was going through from a mental and physical standpoint. It makes a really big difference. So I will, again, continue to scream that to the rooftops because it's so important and we need it so much. So thank you, Samina, for all this information. I see that it sounds everything was very helpful for everyone else. And um, I will mention again, since we were recording, this will be up on a YouTube channel. So if you want to go back, you can't remember something that was said, this will be up in a couple days once it downloads, and uploads, and we can get it on the platform. So, and if anybody else has any questions, you can always reach out to us, or I put Samina's information in the chat if you want to save that to reach out to her at a later time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.